Alright, so for this production technique, I'm going to be talking about guitars, as well as guitar rig and contact, and how I tried to build something that kind of sounded like a realistic band out of half digital stuff. So yeah, I play guitar. I've been playing guitar since I was like 12 or something, which is a lot longer than I would like to think. Haven't really kept up with it too much, but I restrung my guitar, kind of inspired by the live sound classes that we've had, and decided to give this a go properly. So the reference tracks that I've got are pretty much this weird amalgam of electronic and band sounding lo-fi sort of home studio recording. So I tried to emulate that as best I could. I do have an amp here, and the initial plan and trials were to mic that up, but I found that the tone I was getting out of my guitar amp was, I don't know, it's bluesy, so it wasn't really fitting. So I eventually just went to DI, pretty much straight into my interface, which is something I haven't really done too much of, considering I've had a guitar and an interface to use for like forever. So this is my first, I guess, real run at doing that. So I'll solo the guitar group here. I think it's already soloed. Sweet. This is what the guitars sound like on their own here. So what this is I think, I'm not sure if the effects are on here. They are. Cool. I can solo these. So there's one layer. This is with the effects on. I picked one really bright layer, which is super thin and kind of sounds like crap in all honesty, but that serves the purpose. And then to contrast that, there was the, I think this was actually the original layer, but it was, yeah, this deeper, more low mid and less shrieky. Mid, I should have said then, by the way, not low mid. But yeah, together they complement each other pretty well. So the other thing I did was I needed to try and emulate some of the distortion tails and lead-ins that exist in my reference tracks. So Underscores uses distortion and reverb together to create these sort of swells. So in this I tried to do the same thing by grabbing one of the first notes of one of these and putting a ridiculous long reverb on the end of that, and then I think I put some saturation and compression on that, so I ended up with big tails like this. Which eventually just sort of devolved into noise. So I took the parts that were not noisy and then sort of just used them as sweeps to transition into different sections. Yeah, I think I pitched one of these up or down just to create a harmony between them. And I've used these at various pitches throughout the track. So yeah, that is that. Now the second part of this is obviously, in order to have it sound like a band, I needed some form of bass. I don't own a bass guitar and I couldn't get access to one. I've had to use just software I own to try and emulate the feeling of a band. So yay for Contact. The Scarby Rickenbacker bass is really decent, and a lot of the presets in here give it a few different tones, and you've got mic placement options, and it's a fairly decent emulator. So the bass line on this is, in this open section, it's a more bright open string, tons of fret noise, all that sort of stuff, which helps it blend in really well actually. But then in the second part, where it sort of needed to lose a bit of energy, I used still the Scarby bass, but the palm muted version of this, which is a little bit more appropriate for this verse. So completely different tone, which does serve well as the transition between these two bits. So the other part which was Kontakt based, was the live sounding drums as well. So I've ended up arranging a lot of these as samples in here, but the Kontakt version of this basically, yeah, it takes up an awful lot of CPU and RAM to run. So yeah, this is still a Kontakt lane here. So this one is, what is it? The Modern Sparkle kit. Yeah, so just MIDI in. Yeah, so I just threw individual notes in to trigger the drums here. Sounds like this. And yeah, one of the best parts of these kits from Kontakt is the velocity sensitivity is actually pretty incredible. So you can get fairly expressive with it. It's a lot of clicks. I think this was fairly effective anyway. Yeah, that's what it sounds like altogether. There's still a little bit more that I want to do to this as well. The reference tracks that I had were a little bit more lo-fi, I guess. So because these are running straight, I don't think I've got any effects on these. I might on the group, so I might have some compression on the group just to keep the guitars and the bass and stuff in line, and of course the drums. I believe on the drums I put I've got a convolution reverb that's literally just a drum booth impulse. So if I take these two bad boys off, it sounds like this. And that's one of the problems with using samples, is that they're way too clean. So in order to give this a tiny push towards reality, I used this drum bus. For this, I just used it for additional saturation. So real quick, on off on this. And then that combined with convolution reverb. I felt that that made it feel a little bit more real, so hopefully that effect actually translates. As well, I did record in some distortion from synthesizers, so I found a valve distortion pedal from Blackstar that had been sitting in my cupboard for the better part of a decade, and I was fully expecting it to not work, but I switched it on yesterday and realized that it did work. So I experimented a little bit with different synthesizers and just running them directly into that and recording them, and I ended up getting some fairly strange tones out of some of them. I think this has got some filtering on it, so I'll solo this one. This is from an Arturia Micro Freak. And for context, these little chops here, I think I've just pitched them around a tiny bit. In the whole context of the song, they're barely audible, but they just make up tiny little bits of harmony that complement the other vocals and stuff. But as well with the effects on, these are being used as part of the sweeps that we discussed earlier. So yeah, that was a use for that pedal that I did not expect to have, that I'm really glad that I bothered experimenting to find really. So that should be it for this one as well. Cheers, thanks for watching.